and I have my co-host Sharanya on the call today. Um, I think most of you know us and you know Reo.Dev, but for those of you who don't, I'm Piyush. I'm one of the founders, and I lead revenue at Reo.Dev.
And I'm Sharanya. I look after all things customer success. So hopefully most of you have met me by now. Great to meet you all.
Super. So for the next 30 minutes, what we'll do is we've got a very short presentation, and we'll keep it very open for questions and discussions. The topic for today is, as you know, it's about finding revenue opportunities, which can often be a challenge for developer tool companies. So what we've done is compiled a lot of learnings and insights from the journeys of companies like Apollo GraphQL, HashiCorp, and several other companies who have done fantastic work in this space, right? There are some learnings that we can take from those journeys, and we have compiled that, and that's what we'll discuss today. The theme, like we discussed, is going to be how do we take all the developer activities and mine them to find where is there a revenue opportunity. So we'll just get started. I think my screen should be visible. Yes, perfect. Can you see my screen, Sharana?
Yep, I can see it.
Super, thank you. All right, so as you know, the topic for today is finding revenue opportunity from developer activities. And we all know that selling developer tools is really easy, right? So why are we here? Because that could not be far from reality. We all have a tough job at hands. We are talking to an audience that does not like to be sold to. We are selling a product that is deeply technical and can have long sales cycles and so on, right? So there is a unique problem that we are solving. Everybody who has sold to developers will resonate with some of this, right? CTOs don't respond to sales calls, emails don't get a response. Even if you're talking to some of the developer teams, some sales cycles are very short, some are very long, some deals close really fast, some linger on for months or even years. And one of the most common objections always is, why should I buy when I can build it in-house? I've got the most talented engineering team, so don't try to sell, right? So these are some of the most common challenges, and it often becomes like an enigma as to how to crack it. I think what we've learned from the journeys of other companies and from working with 30 plus developer tool GTM teams is that the root cause here is that whatever problem we are solving is not a big enough problem for this engineering team today. If we are selling a security solution, security is not top of the mind for whatever reason. If we are selling a database, they don't need a database. And every engineering team is always pressed for bandwidth, right? If what we are doing is not a part of their sprint plan, it's not going to get picked up. No engineering team ever has bandwidth, right? So end of the day, this is the root cause. And if we can crack this, if we can find a team for which it is a big enough problem, CTOs will respond to sales calls, sales cycles will be short, and teams will not prefer to build. They will prefer to save time rather than save money. So all of these things get solved if we can figure out which teams have a big enough problem today and which teams might have this problem in the near future. So that is the crux of it, right? That is exactly what we try to solve. And the way we solve that is using this framework called the developer buying journey. This is the framework that has helped HashiCorp, MongoDB, Apollo GraphQL scale their go-to-market motions. And we will talk about this framework today, but essentially, if we can take all the developer activity signals out there and put them, arrange them into a developer buying journey, it can unlock the secret of where should we focus, where is there a revenue opportunity. So let's talk about this framework, right? The DBJ framework. Now, this is a framework to get started with. This is not the framework that will apply in every scenario, but this is a standardized framework that applies most often, right? And if you think about it, it starts with problem realization. The first step in the journey of any team buying any product is usually problem realization, because developer tools are problem solvers. You're facing a problem with scalability, you go find a solution. You're facing a problem with using the same thing across multiple teams, team collaboration, you go find a solution. So a developer tool by inherent nature is a problem solver, and therefore the journey starts with realizing the problem. Now the problem can be realized internally, I mean, the team could figure out that they have a problem on their own, or the problem realization can also be induced. Just to give you an example, before companies like Sneak came in, shift left security was not a problem. Nobody thought about it. And what Sneak and others have done fantastically well is made the industry realize that there is a problem here. That leaving the security stuff to the end for the CISO is not the right approach. You have to bake security in from day one. So problems can be realized by the teams themselves, or they can be realized by a lot of thought leadership, content, creating the category. But let's say there is a team that realizes they have a problem. What do they do next? The next step in the journey is discovery. The developer or the engineer goes out there to find solutions that can solve the problem. At this stage, they would be doing multiple things like reading technical blogs, searching on Google, maybe go to a Stack Overflow or a G2 or places like there to find what are the options available to solve this problem. What are the products? What are the most reputed products? So that is the discovery stage. At this stage, we want our product to be discovered. So this is where the presence in the developer community, awareness amongst developers is very important. SEO is very important. Having enough content out there so that our discoverability is high is very important. And hopefully with this, the top 2-3 products generally get picked up for an evaluation, which is the next stage in the developer journey. Out of the 10 products that do solve the problem, which are the top 2 or 3 that move on to the evaluation stage. At this stage, there is a much more in-depth evaluation. Top 2-3 products, developers will go read the documentation, go in a lot more detail, see if it integrates with their technology stack. Does it do what they need to do? Is it priced fairly? Like, is it free or is it priced? If it is priced, how is it priced? Does it ballpark match the expectations? Once all of this has happened, in a typical SaaS product, it would lead straight to a conversion event. Okay, I've evaluated 3 products. I like this product. Let's buy. But unfortunately or fortunately, that's not the case in developer tools. There are more steps involved. Another step can be an early adoption, right? And this step is where somebody starts playing around with the product. They install it on their local machine. They maybe sign up for a free trial, start using it, start consuming the free tier and stuff like that. Then you move to an advanced usage where people are scaling it up. Maybe multiple teams have started using it. They've deployed it across multiple clouds and whatnot. And then you have a conversion event. So again, this journey can differ, but this is a broad framework to think about it. If we go in depth for each of these stages, like we discussed, problem realization can happen either on their own. The engineering teams can realize they have a problem, or it can be induced through a lot of content, thought leadership, category creation, and then discovery happens. Now, the point is, this is where developer activities are so powerful. What we have done here is listed what developer activities mean that this account is at the discovery stage. For example, when you see the first few visits on your documentation or website, that is the discovery stage. 2 visits, 3 visits in the last 2 days or last 3 days, that is discovery. When you see a company go and star multiple products on GitHub in the same category, they are discovering multiple products in this category. That is also discovery. Let's say somebody has just joined your community in the last couple of days. Again, they are in the discovery stage. They're probably looking for a solution in your category. And at this stage, you will typically only see small teams, 1 or 2 developers involved. You won't see, like, even from a big company, typically might not see a lot of developers getting involved. So this is how developer activities can map into developer buying journey stages. If you look at evaluation, the activities happening at this stage are different. You will see different signals here. For example, we'll see a lot more time spent in the documentation, and this is so much more powerful than website. If a developer or a developer team is reading your docs in depth, they're at least evaluating a product. They've got no reason to read the documentation otherwise. So this is different from discovery. You see more in-depth evaluation of the docs, more time spent. If you offer a self-hosted product, or if you have any kind of command line codes, people might even install your product on their local machine. Very common for open source or commercial open source products or products which allow on-prem deployment. If not, the other option here is to start a trial. Somebody might sign up for a free trial, And typically they'll sign up with a Gmail or a personal email or even a GitHub because not ready to reveal like the company email yet. Right? This is still evaluation, not decided to use the product. They might ask one or two first questions in the community if they have some doubts. And again, the number of developers involved will be low, right? You don't expect 30, 40 developers to get involved. And even the buyer would not be involved at this stage. Discovery and evaluation is still being done by some junior developer or maybe mid-level developer in the team. And again, developer activities, tracking them, can help us understand what stage this account is at. Moving on to early adoption, this is where we see a lot more activity happen. For example, sustained visit to the documentation. You see a company or developers from a company coming to your docs for the last 3-4 weeks. They've adopted the product generally, right? You might start to see GitHub forks. You might start to see the first few issues and comments on GitHub. Like somebody might post an issue, a bug report, or a feature request because they just started using the product, right? They'll have questions. You'll see more questions in the community. And then a few other things start happening. The first few integrations happen here. Like they might do integrations with their internal database or other systems that are needed to be integrated. You'll probably see a deployment in staging or production. And this is where you start to see product usage data come in, either through telemetry or through cloud usage. And all of these signals combined will give you a very good picture of who has started using your product, who's in the early stages. At this stage, you might see more developers get involved. In addition to the one or two who are evaluating your product, a few more might get involved at this stage. And finally, if you think of advanced usage, all those get amplified, get magnified. Sustained activity for a month or more, and multiple touch points, right? Multiple issues opened on GitHub, multiple questions asked in the community. And then you start seeing people hit usage limits. So either feature gates, paywalls, user limits, and then you start seeing activity on specific parts of your documentation, advanced use cases, parts of the documentation related to troubleshooting, or that will help make this a team product. How do multiple developers collaborate, enterprise security, scaling. So these are the signals that tell you that this company has started using your product quite actively. They've become a power user. They're looking at the advanced features. You have a lot of product telemetry data coming in, multiple deployments, stuff like that. And that's when you know this company is actually a power user. And then eventually you will see some sort of buying signals, like somebody will book a demo or a sales call, or might show purchase intent by visiting the pricing page. So this is a standard developer buying journey. For every company, this is different, right? But it typically follows a similar pattern. So we'll take a pause here. If you have any questions, do let us know. Otherwise, what we've planned for the next few minutes is how does this transpire for two sample products? So that's what's coming next. How do you build this kind of a developer buying journey or a DBJ framework for an infra product, which is very much at the back end, and then for a front-end authentication product, and how the two journeys look very, very different. That's what we'll talk about next. But would love to have any questions or thoughts on this. If you've got any experience building this for your own product in your own company, we would love to hear that experience as well. So there's a question which says, can a similar pattern not be worked out by weighing each interaction? 100%. It can totally be built by weighing out each interaction. The point is, every interaction is different. So a website visit is not the same as a documentation review. Even in the documentation, if somebody is reading your quick start guide versus somebody is reading how to create multi-tenants or how to scale beyond a certain number of APIs, those two interactions are very different. And the essence here is to differentiate between them and interpret them properly. Like a quick start guide is probably at the evaluation or the early adoption stage, versus scaling, troubleshooting is probably at the late stage or advanced usage stage. So to answer your question in short, 100%, it is about weighing each interaction, but it's also about understanding what does that interaction mean in terms of where the developer is. Like a GitHub star and an issue are very different things. A star can be a casual star. But if somebody's posting a bug request, sorry, a bug report on GitHub, that person is using a product. And if they've been reporting bugs for the last 6 months, they've been using a product for at least for 6 months, or your competitors or your complementary product. So the insight in every interaction is different, and that should be baked in while building this developer journey. Awesome. I think let's move to the next part, and I'll hand it over to Sharanya to walk you through how does this framework look like for a company in the data infra space. Sorry, Sharanya, just one quick thing. Could AI not help? 100% AI can help, and I think there's a very, very good opportunity here to use AI to solve all of this. It is frankly not possible for like a RevOps person to sit and do all of this. And we'll talk about how we are bringing in AI to solve this problem. But short answer, absolutely agree. Big use case for using AI here.
Perfect. Cool. So I think when we were discussing this ourselves, we were wondering what it would look like, right, for different kinds of products. And the first one, which we thought we could like dig deeper on, is a database product, as Piyush mentioned. You can think of it something similar to dbt. In case for people who are not familiar, dbt is a data transformation tool. It takes the data in your warehouse and you can transform it into more usable and interesting formats. Essentially, it's the T in ETL tools. So let's look at what the developer buying journey framework would look like for this company. So as all these journeys start, right, it would always start with a problem. And in this case, this problem would typically surface when an engineering team is trying to do a data migration, or they're trying to consolidate their data and they're trying to do some analysis on it and want to do something more complex. And at this point, they realize that, okay, they would need a solution for something like this. So typically, then this company would head into the discovery phase. They would be looking for multiple data transformation solutions. And there's like a bunch of places where you could search for this, right? Of course, like Google is your friend here, but then you would look at different communities. You would start checking out, speaking to people, what they're using. And you would also like check out what open source solutions already exist. So in dbt's case, at least in this case, a prospective company would check out dbt, it would check out Daxter, Airflow, and other similar open source solutions. And then this company would also start visiting docs and the websites of all these companies. Typically, like it would be a small number of devs in the discovery phase when you would be looking at different solutions. But like once you've got your initial list of like solutions to check out, then you would probably, do a bit more of an in-depth evaluation. Like in this case, I would read dbt docs. You'd also, check out their website, look out for blogs. And in most cases, what makes developers most peculiar is they would love to like play around with the product as well. So if there's any free version, like if there is a sandbox environment or a cloud product, which dbt does have, a dev would probably sign up for that. If there is a way to like install the product locally, you would see people typically running like all these pip install commands or doing a Docker pull. And at this point, at this evaluation phase, you'd see the first visits to the pricing page as well. So typically people would be doing this for all solutions which fit their use case. And then from there, you would decide, okay, this solution fits my need. Let me try using it for my use case. So then we move on. This is the classic adoption or the early usage phase. So at this point, if you're playing around with the product, right, you would really be checking out the docs, you would be trying to run specific commands to make it fit your use case. And you'd also maybe, you would try a small test. You'd maybe connect your data platform and try to build your first few modules. At this point, like you'd probably look at specific pages in the docs to do something like maybe a bit more complex. The first few roadblocks would come into play as well. You then realize, okay, this is something I want to do, but I'm not able to do right now. And then, of course, GitHub is the best place. Like people would start raising bug requests or feature requests. So this is when you know that, okay, somebody is already like seriously using the product. And you'll also start seeing like multiple people get involved. So essentially, like people are trying to see, okay, this is a good solution. It fits my use case. Let me start playing around with it. Then post that, like once you've kind of deployed your solution, now you want to use it for like more use cases. So you try probably building more complex pipelines. You try to do more integrations. You'd move to a more complex data set. And I think as you start moving to these more complex use cases, that's when the first teething or scaling problems come into picture, right? You're using something which was meant for a simple use case and trying to build something more advanced. And then, yeah, so then this is when you can see most engagement in the community. So I would probably have specific troubles. And I think like, okay, maybe someone else has already solved it before. I'd start asking questions about that. I'd start raising issues on GitHub or whatever forums are available. And at this point, you would see activity, like, prolonged activity. By this time, the evaluation is done. People have already started using the product. So yeah, you can tell, you will see quite a long activity chain in most cases. And as the stack becomes more complex, the company would also maybe hire somebody, like you would want someone just to maintain this pipeline. So you start seeing like job postings as well with the specific skill sets. And you can also see a large number of developers involved. It makes sense, right? So most likely a team is using and trying to maintain this product. And then at this phase, you would also start like, people will start realizing, okay, it's getting too complex. Maybe there's like something which can make my life easier. So then you would start reading about like the different features available. Like maybe, I think in this case, you'd start looking at logs. You'd maybe check out security features. You'd also, of course, check out the pricing page again. And ideally, like, if needed, you would try to look for support or try to talk to people on the team, on DBT's team. So this is essentially what the developer journey would look like for an infra product like DBT. But how does this translate into like actions for the GTM team, right? Like what kind of, like at which point should you engage? So we try to look at that as well.
And Shalini, I just want to come in with a few points here, right? Now, this journey is very custom for DBT. So wanted to highlight a few things here. If you look at the first stage discovery, if I'm DBT, I would be monitoring Dagster, Airflow, every other product in my category. And if a team is engaging with any of those products, I know there can be an opportunity. I want to be discovered. So if you see the discover column, monitoring products which are competing with you, which are relevant for you, is very important. The second stage, evaluation. I think this is where developer tools start looking very different from traditional SaaS, right? If somebody's done an installation of your product on the local, that is a much better signal than somebody reading your blogs for the last 30 days and visiting your blogs 40 times. So the traditional SaaS scoring has always been how many visits to my website, how much time spent on my website. In developer tools, it does not matter. If somebody's installed your product on their local using a Docker pull or a pip install, or if they've connected even a test database, that person is way more serious. The person reading the blog would just be an enthusiast. So there are these inflection points at every stage. For example, if you look at the early adoption stage, the inflection point in case of DBT is connecting the data platform. If you've connected your internal company data platform with DBT, you are serious. That is a very strong inflection point. If you've built the first 5 models, then you are serious, right? If you are posting issues on GitHub, you are a serious user. So these are the inflection points that we need to track. And then finally, if you look at the scaling stage, again, some inflection points over there can be if somebody is visiting troubleshooting a lot, if they're frequenting the troubleshooting page quite a bit, if they're hiring somebody specifically with DBT experience. These are the signals that we need to watch out for. And these signals are very different than just repeat activity on the website or somebody reading about ETL somewhere on the internet. One of the questions on chat is how do you know if they've downloaded, right? So it's tricky, but it is doable. Depends on each asset. For example, one of the things that we help our customers do is track every Docker pull or every pip install by putting our beacon in the documentation. And we won't go into the technicalities of how to do it, but just to tell you at a high level, if it's happening on a GitHub, that is publicly available data that can be mined and tracked. If it's happening on, let's say, the command line interface, then our beacon can help you track who is doing all of these activities, like who did the installation, who is now doing the connection between DBT and the data platform. All of that can be tracked if it's happening on the command line interface. If it's happening on the cloud product, anyway, it can be tracked. So all of this is trackable. 2-3 technologies that we've built can help you do that. So yeah, the point we were trying to make is each of these stages will have an inflection point. And the better we can define the inflection point, the better we can understand where is this account in the journey. And I think what we'll talk about next is how do you act on that after that. All right. So then let me know when to move on.
Yeah. So I think we can move on. So as Piyush mentioned, right, the main thing here is we're all in a resource constrained environment. At which stage do you use what resource? And what are like signals to tell you that, okay, at this stage, I should put my sales team in, right? So in this example, there are a couple of things. There are like, different phases where a sales team can get in, but here are a few things which we found interesting. So initially, it's more about building awareness, right, in the earlier part of the journey. But if you see, like in the adoption phase, and also perhaps, during the evaluation phase, you see that this company, DBT, has a cloud offering. So at this point, it's an interesting time where if you can kind of, push them into a build versus buy decision. You already know that that's something which is going to come downstream. But then if you can make it like extremely clear that it makes more sense to buy this rather than build it, there is a chance for a sales opportunity between the evaluation and adoption phase. Because typically these kind of products have a long implementation and sales cycle. But in this case, because of the cloud product, they can kind of condense it. And of course, the classic sales opportunity is towards the end. Once you know that they've deployed your product, and you know that they're using the free version or the community version of the product. At this point, DBT would know that they're very soon such a user is going to run into some sort of issue. It could be anything. It could be something like a rate limiter, or it could be like the pipeline becomes more complex. At this point, they know that okay, they would have need of of a paid offering. So that is also one of the main sales opportunities here. In both these instances, it makes sense, to put SDR resources onto this. But you can also kind of, push them into a build versus buy decision ahead as well. For example, I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I was also going to just talk about that. So the opportunity ahead, right? The earlier opportunity is more of a soft opportunity. It's when you can kind of push them into a decision earlier, but typically the main thing would be towards the end after they've deployed. Sorry, go ahead, Piyush.
I was just going to say that this is very bespoke, right? For example, for every product, this will be different, and this requires a discussion between the go-to-market teams, the product team, and probably other decision makers to understand what are those inflection points. For example, once somebody has crossed the early adoption, if they've not adopted cloud or if they've not adopted the SaaS version when they're getting started, there might not be a revenue opportunity for some time. So understanding this peak and this drop is very important, because there's no point investing resources here if somebody's not taken your cloud product on day one and they've started using the open source and they are not going to need to upgrade for some time. So there's no point investing resources there. So understanding these stages and understanding the inflection points and then mapping the conversion events or the compelling events along this chain is very important to accurately deploying resources where there is a revenue opportunity. Yeah, by the way, we're not associated with DBT in any way. We just took it up as an example because we thought this is quite popular. ETL is a big category, and I think everybody could relate to the example. Awesome. Any questions? I think there's one question on chat, which is, what if the product is not open source? I think that's a great segue into the next example we have. It is a product which is not open source. We've done a developer buying journey for a product called WorkOS. It helps add authentication to any product like SSO and things like that. Now, if you see here, the developer buying journey is very different, right? Here, it's again, the framework is the same, but we'll see the stages and the steps are quite different. For example, again, starts with problem realization. Somebody wants to add authentication to their product. It can be a mobile app, a web app, doesn't matter, but they need a product and they've realized they need a product. Step two is they go and discover options available. Now, Auth0, Okta, these are the big incumbents in this space, and there are so many more products who have built very specific use cases. And this is where the developer assigned the task of adding authentication would go and explore multiple products, see what options are out there. This is where, if your product has been discovered, you would see the first few visits on the documentation and website. Again, number of developers will be low. Then if your product makes it to the top 2 or 3, moves to the evaluation stage where the team starts looking into your product in a lot more detail. They start reading your documentation, API reference guide. Now, if you're a SaaS product, you might have a sandbox environment. Engagement with the sandbox is it's a very good signal. Another very good signal is if somebody's checking out the integrations, because then they're serious about it. And then eventually they're installing your SDK. Let's say they're generating an API key, testing the API key, testing the API using the temporary API key. All of these are very good signals. At this stage, you are almost certain that there's an evaluation going on, and very soon there's going to be a decision. There can be pricing page visits. Again, 1 or 2 developers are active. Now, after this, for a SaaS product, 2 or 3 things could happen. One is, if you do offer a free tier, somebody would start with the free tier. They sign up, they install the dependencies. In case of WorkOS, the inflection point is installing the dependencies. So you sign up, you create an API key, you install the dependencies, and then you add the auth kit to your app. If you've done these things, you've already adopted WorkOS. And now you've started using it, product data starts coming in, you start capturing how many monthly authentications are happening, which is your pricing metric. And you might see more developers get involved now, more people. You'll see a buyer get involved at some stage. They might come and check out your website, your pricing, and stuff like that. And then finally, at some stage, the free usage will exhaust, and you will see the customer start hitting the paywalls. And the paywall can be in terms of feature gates, usage limits, rate limits, or once again, they might start looking at advanced use cases which are not free. For example, audit logs, SSO in case of WorkOS. Now, if we see the buying event here, the buying opportunity here is much earlier in the journey. So right after discovery, at the evaluation itself, there is a sales opportunity, because if the evaluation is favorable in your case, if it's favorable for you, it will lead to a revenue conversion. There's no scenario where the team can use your product for a year without paying. And even if they do, it doesn't matter, because eventually when they hit the usage limit, they will end up paying. That is the idea behind offering the free tier. So the sales involvement in this case happens much earlier in the journey. If we compare that with an infra product that we saw earlier, the sales engagement happened much later. That is when the team or the developer team is ready to buy. But for completely 180-degree opposite product, the sales opportunity is much faster. And we will have all sorts of variation in between, right? So these are two extremes, but we'll see all types of variations in between. So this is a different journey than that what we saw for the data info product. Now, what you would want to do is plan interventions accordingly, and then just some examples of what the interventions could look like. For instance, if this is the journey, right? Let's say somebody is getting started with your open source product and you want them to use your cloud product on day one. Just some ideas. A big decision here is a build versus buy. If there is an economic case to buy versus build, that can be really helpful. We have seen some very good GTM teams have this as part of their arsenal, where they show the engineering leader why buying today makes sense. Maybe building today is cheaper, but in the long run, maintaining the infra on their own will require significant manpower. The deployments will get complicated. They might have to have engineers specifically with this capability. So if you can build a strong build versus buy case in your favor, you can sway these early adopters to adopt your cloud product on day one. Another good tactic here is to offer a lot of credits so that the cloud option or the buy option starts looking cheaper. And here we are thinking something like an Amazon Web Services. They offer $150,000 worth of free credits just to get you started. And they know eventually after a year, you will exhaust credits, you will end up paying them. So something similar can be done here. What if we get somebody started on the cloud product with a year's worth of free credits? There is a good chance they might exhaust the credits in 6 months instead of a year if the company is doing really well. And those are the kind of companies you want to work with, the really fast growing ones who are growing faster than they expected. So giving away those free credits actually helped you shorten the sales cycle from 3 years to maybe 6 months. Maybe they had started with your open source product. After 3 years, they would have hit the next compelling event. But by giving them $50,000 worth of free credits, we got them on the cloud product on day one. 6 months, they exhausted. Once they're comfortable with the cloud product, there's no reason to go back to self-hosting. So this is how the interventions can be planned according to the buying journey stages and the compelling events. Another example here is, in this case, we know that if we win the evaluation, let's say we are WorkOS, we win the evaluation versus Auth0. Somebody puts our auth kit in their app. Now we really need to screw up to come out of the product. And again, the same principle applies. If engineering teams don't have bandwidth to add new products, they also don't have bandwidth to break what is working. So the entire momentum here, to give you the actual numbers, WorkOS allows free usage up to 1 million MAUs. And the whole idea there is just win the evaluation, get your product embedded as an infra in the client's product, and then eventually as the team grows, they will hit a conversion event and they will eventually end up buying a product, paying for it. So this is broadly what we had. I know we've got a few minutes left for Q&A, but just to summarize everything, this is where we started. The sole problem is to identify which engineering team has a big enough problem. The way to do that is to build a DBJ framework. This is what the journey looks like. Start with problem realization, discovery, evaluation, early adoption, late adoption, and then conversion. The key thing to note here is different signals mean different things. If we can map each of the activities that the developer has done to these buckets, then we'll end up with a good framework. And our sales teams, our marketing teams will know exactly where each account is and what action to take on that account. So yeah, I think we'll pause here. We'll pause for questions. Or again, if anybody can share their experience building something similar, that would be phenomenal. There's a great comment. So Brian, 100% agree. This is exactly what the direction we are taking, because we've realized that this is one of the key parts to cracking the go-to-market. So yeah, uh, we are bringing this into the Reo.Dev platform. It's currently in beta. But yes, this will evolve and this will be an AI-driven feature. So yes, very soon we'll see this. Awesome. Thank you so much for the inputs. I think all the inputs today have been really valuable. We've made a note of the inputs, building this into the product, using AI to make this simple, finding the difference between just scoring versus scoring based on developer input signals. I think all of these are brilliant inputs. Thank you so much. We hope this was helpful. If you have any thoughts, even after the session, please feel free to reach out. The last thing I'll say is, if you think this is valuable and if you want to have a session like this specifically for your product, feel free to ping us and book a time. We're happy to get on a call and maybe collaborate on building this kind of a journey for your specific product.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. We'll send you the recording for this session and hopefully we'll see you for the next sessions.